Hello, hello. You're listening to For the Girls, Gays and Days, the podcast where two friends process their emotions concerning pop culture of note to the acronymed community. From film to television, music and more, we're here to tell you what caught our queer eyes this week. I'm Colt, he, him.
I'm Alex, they, them.
Welcome.
Welcome to it, babies. Cheers.
This week, we're talking Barbenheimer and RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars 8. And the category is film. So,
Yes.
on the 21st of July, we saw the cinematic event of the year that studios will undoubtedly learn all the wrong lessons from.
Yes.
It was the double feature of two vastly different films with arguably two of the best directors currently working. We have Greta Gerwig's Barbie and Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. I was not able to go on opening day as I would have liked, but there are many reports of the atmosphere of this release and people dressing up in all pink and all black for the respective films. Many people who committed to doing both on the same day, doing outfit changes in between. It just felt like a moment, you know?
Yeah.
And I think the best part of this entire movement, if you will, was that it was wholly organic. Barbie was essentially put up against Oppenheimer by a bitter Warner Brothers trying to stick it to Christopher Nolan after their very public falling out over the release of Tenet and the streaming situation during the pandemic. But instead of a war being raged, it became this thing where people could just celebrate two, hopefully, really good films and the act of going to the cinema. So what was your sort of understanding of the sort of
Zeitgeist?
feeling around it? Yes, zeitgeist. Great
Yeah.
word.
So I think I really got into it because I have to spend my day on social media. So I really got into everybody being into it. And obviously you and I both have studied Nolan. We're both big fans of Gerwig. So it was definitely something that I was excited for both. I couldn't afford to go to both movies, so I picked one on the Saturday for a matinee. And it's just like you said, I live in Birmingham, Alabama. It's very blue, but you wouldn't really think of Alabama as a place where campness is embraced.
Yeah.
But that theme was Camp Boy. I'm talking people with dyed hair, outfits come through. Bring your Barbie doll with you. Everybody from like 8-year-olds to 80-year-olds. Development. And like I went with my wife and we had the best time. And afterwards, I went to the bathroom and she said, there was a couple that walks up and the husband and the wife high-fived each other and he went to the Oppenheimer side and she went and it was, I mean, it's just one of those things where I think you always remember going to the movies almost like that. I think the last time I felt like that was when I went to go watch the opening weekend of Licorice Pizza at this tiny artsy cinema in Los Angeles. And people were just excited to be there. And that's a little bit ago now. So I think like just that feeling and my cinema laughter is loudly as me. But I loved every minute.
Shall we get to the reviewing?
Unpack your feelings. Tell me.
We're going to start with Barbie, as that's what I saw first. And that's the one that you actually watched. So yeah, Barbie, as I said, directed by Greta Gerwig, who also wrote the screenplay alongside her husband, Noah Baumbach. It tells the story of stereotypical Barbie, who finds herself having an existential crisis that requires her to go to the real world and seek out the human girl who is playing with her. It, of course, stars Margot Robbie, with supporting performances from Ryan Gosling, America Ferrera, Will Ferrell, and a litany of others, including personal standouts of mine, Kate McKinnon as Weird Barbie, Issa Rae as President Barbie, and Hari Nef as Dr. Barbie.
I mean, all incredible.
Oh, chefs.
But nobody missed. I want to give a special shout out to who I think is my embodiment on film, Alan.
Played by Michael Cera. Yeah.
Who was going to be played by Jonathan Groff.
Yes, I just saw that today.
I would have missed Jonathan Groff if he hadn't really put his whole pussy into this. It was so good, so brilliant, and so great that all of Ken's clothes fit to Alan. He's his special friend.
His special friend. And yeah, people really have connected with Alan as a concept, as a character, as someone who doesn't fit in with the Kens or the Barbies, but feels safer with Barbies. So you definitely have a lot of the sort of queer community, gay men attaching a lot of meaning to that sort of thing of sort of the female friendships that we sort of grow up forming and surrounding ourselves with an army of women. And then also a lot of non-binary folks like yourself are sort of like, it's this character that's sort of in a little bit of both worlds, in a really lovely way. And that's just one of like the things of like, this is a film of just joy, but also a little bit of melancholy, sort of like candy coated, but deeply meaningful. Yeah, just such a joy to watch. I laughed so hard at so many points, got a little teary-eyed at other points, full body goosebumps at certain moments. I'm looking at you, Billie Eilish. You did it again, babes.
You
did it again.
You know, how did she do it?
Never misses. Never misses.
Never misses. I was thinking of this.
Do you know
this well,
who does miss things? Men. Men have missed things. Men have wholly misunderstood this film in a way that is completely not surprising, yet still disappointing. In the sort of the feminist approach of the film, and then getting very, very fragile, so fragile and insecure around it. And sort of misunderstanding this thing of the way that a world run by women is sort of set up compared to a patriarchy, and like a matriarchy just involves women doing what they want without any thought for men. Like they can do whatever they want. There's no attempt to control. It's just an apathy, if you will. Whereas when they sort of flip things in the film to when men are in charge, it's about domination. And there's something it's so frustrating about men continuing to misunderstand that. And watching it is so clever and so nuanced and so funny to take something that's so horrific. And there are points where like some of the people in the cinema were laughing maybe a little too hard. Some of the men were laughing a little too hard at the misogynistic jokes. Whereas I'm sitting there going, this is fucking terrifying. When like Ken's in the real world and sort of experiencing what it's like where men are sort of in charge of everything, and he's getting increasingly excited and he's making all these jokes, and I'm just like, this is terrifying. But there are a lot of men who are just laughing at that a little too loud, who then shut all the way up when you get to some of the Godfather references. And who sings the song? Who sings the song?
Push by Rob Thomas.
Yeah.
Rob Thomas who sings it. Might be. Let me know in the comments. Take me apart.
Listening of white men with guitars making uncomfortable eye contact.
Yeah, pick one, to be fair. It could be any of them. But you know what?
And then sitting around me got real quiet during that. They were laughing a little too hard at the misogynistic jokes, but yeah.
You know what was so interesting about that is this binary idea of being. They seem to project it onto cultural criticism and cultural understanding. Not everything is black and white. Not everything is... Yeah. Just binary thinking really lets everybody down. And that's what I really took away from the movie. Like, patriarchal standards are too much for everybody. Like, it's too much to expect from anybody to be this portrayal of manliness, of feminineness, of whateverness. It's impossible for everybody. We came for the horses and we got turned off. Like, I was like, yeah, girl. Like, I always thought it would be one thing, but it wasn't. And it didn't make me sad. Like, I think everybody gets to have their own version of a movie when they walk away. That's fine. But like, I think maybe just take a minute and think about how you're viewing things and ask yourself questions. Like, why do I have to see it as all good or all bad? Or like, binary thinking lets us down, folks.
And it's this sort of like interesting thing, the way that Greta and Noah have sort of written this, is to also just highlight the sort of men in society who feel lonely and alienated and turn to the patriarchy out of anger and desperation, and how that's really toxic. And that's, again, why it's frustrating that people are misunderstanding so much of this film is that like it is sort of like a warning. There's like a warning call of like, this is what happens. This is what happens. This is how you end up with the sort of incel culture is around this. And as you say, it is the point of like the patriarchy damages everybody.
Everybody.
Let's go on to Greta. Greta has
the references to French film. Just her little her mind.
Greta Gerwig's mind is just I fall in love with her more and more every interview I see with her, where she sort of talks about how she wants her actors to not be stressed on set in the situation. And she goes out of her way to make her actors as comfortable as possible on set. And they just have a really good time while also getting the work done and also being so clever. And as you say, the references, she is so smart and so learned on cinema, which again, I think infuriates a lot of film bros who want so badly to hate this film, but it's just like, come on, the reference it, like she's able to like make the like pinpoint jab at The Godfather because she's a connoisseur of cinema herself. And there's so many references that go into this film, from Dr. Strangelove with the sort of boardroom of it all to, you know, the red shoes, Wizard of Oz everywhere in this film, dripping in this film. She's just so smart. It's so exciting to have someone like her be able to have this sort of trajectory that she's sort of had with her career and sort of go from her solo direction to go from Lady Bird to Little Women to Barbie, just all hits, no misses, and now going on from there to Narnia. I'm very excited to see what she does with that. I think it's so ridiculous when people are sort of just like, she's selling out. She's just becoming like and I'm just like, no, you don't sort of say the same thing about so many other directors. You didn't say the same thing about Nolan when he did Batman.
Nobody said that about Nolan when he did Batman. But my thing is like, the minute we finished this, my wife and I looked at each other and said, we're going to go home and watch Frances Ha. Like it's literally, it's one of our favorite movies. But I have to say that I really admire somebody who wears their heart on their sleeve so much and kind of says, this is what I love. This is what excites me. This is why I get up in the morning. And here it is, like, take it or leave it. And everyone's taking it and running with it. Yeah. And everyone keeps that. Because
massive box office hit. Massive box office hit. It is on track to be it's on track to be the first film to reach $1 billion by a female director. It smashed a whole bunch of records, and just love to see it.
Love to see it. Really appreciated being in the world. I love it so much.
And to have the film just be so good, like it is such a romp. Like while I was watching it, and even afterwards, while I was watching it, I was like, I cannot wait to watch this again.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Obviously, we have to talk about awards. Oh, well, I have to talk about awards. I love to talk about awards. I love to theorize and prognosticate. I think it has to get in for Best Picture. Has to get in for Best Picture. I think it could very well get in for Director, for Greta. That's less of a certainty, but I think it definitely could. Ryan Gosling, I think, is a very likely nomination for Best Supporting Actor.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
It is a little frustrating that sort of in the Barbie movie, the performance that got the loudest praise was the male performance. Is a little disappointing, but not surprising. Yeah. And he is very good in it. But I also think that Margot is just pitch perfect in it as well, and is absolutely deserving of a Best Actress nomination. Whether she gets it or not, I don't know. But she is so good. Yeah, so funny. The comedic timing is on point. The crying on command, like the single tear. Like, I mean, how could I see so many awards prognosticators sort of talking about how, oh yeah, Gosling, no brainer. Margot, I don't know. And I'm just like, really? Did you?
Just haters, just full on haters. It's like the people who.
It's not even that. It's just sort of, it's just a sort of dismissal that is just, and I think it comes from someone like Margot Robbie being as good as she is, that people sort of take for granted just how good she is in this film. But she is so good in this film. I've heard some people say that America Ferrera could be a potential squeeze in for supporting actress.
To me, I think so.
delivered that monologue of hers beautifully, beautifully. What is a Greta Gerwig film without a monologue about the nature of womanhood? And I hope this is a feature in every one of her films because I love it. I think the screenplay, speaking of that, I think that's a shoo-in. I think that could very well win for adapted screenplay. I think production design is another one that feels like a no-brainer that it should probably be winning.
It'd be dumb if it doesn't. They painted those backdrop, folks. They painted the backdrops.
They caused a pink paint shortage globally.
I mean, come on.
To paint that set. And just, so clever. Costumes as well is another one that I think is a no-brainer for a nomination, a likely contender for the win. Yeah, I'm just so glad that the film sort of lived up to the hype for me anyway, for a lot of people, because I was hyping it up. I was big hyping up this film and what it was going to be. And I sort of turned to my friend who I went to go watch it with, and I was just like, can you imagine if we hate it? And she was like, that would just ruin my entire year if that happened. We just sort of turned to each other. We turned to each other at the end and just like, well, year's not ruined. Year is not ruined, yeah.
A lot of people felt that way. It really, I mean, between the Barbie movie and the Taylor Swift tour, the American economy is out of recession. And I'm not even joking about
not even a joke.
The Fed literally said, shout out to Taylor Swift for that. And they didn't shout out the Barbie movie, but I mean, $4 billion, it's on track. These two combined, Oppenheimer and Barbie, are on track in a couple of weeks to earn $4 billion US. So if that doesn't save this fucking country, nothing.
Wild. Yeah. So shall we move on to Oppenheimer then? Written and directed by Christopher Nolan.
Hadn't seen it.
It tells the story of the real-life J. Robert Oppenheimer, the man responsible for the creation of the atomic bomb. It comes with all the Nolan standards.
There's a wife.
Linear narratives, questionable sound mix, and yes, poorly written women. I took a note of the first time I noticed a woman speak in the film. Do you want to take a guess of how long it took for me to note that down?
45 to an hour?
You're close. It was over 30 minutes, about 35 minutes.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can count the number of women with speaking parts on one hand. It doesn't even come close to passing the Bechdel test. I truly don't think that Christopher Nolan's ever heard of the Bechdel test. He's like, is that a French dish? I'm not familiar. The two main women also fall squarely into that sort of Madonna or whore trope, which is disappointing once again, but not surprising.
Not surprising.
But poorly written women aside, both those actresses, both Florence Pugh and Emily Blunt, are giving the best performances they can, given how underwritten both of those characters are. And, you know, credit to them, more power to them. I hope that at least Emily Blunt can spin a supporting actress nomination out of it. But in terms of the film in general, it took me about an hour to start to follow the story. The first hour feels very disjointed narratively, for me anyway. I have spoken to some other people who had similar problems with it, that it was just very Nolan-y, very timey-wimey, now we're here, now we're there, and just introducing so many people. The supporting cast is massive for this film, just massive. And that first hour felt very bogged down in establishing these people, introducing character after male character after male character after male character, with names that I, gun to my head, could not tell you now. That being said, it's all very negative, but once it gets going, it is excellent. Once it gets going, the pace is constant and driving. From the moment they put together the sort of R&D research team and they sort of build this town in the middle of nowhere to do their warmongering work, the pace is just snappy, and we're moving, and I can follow things. And the direction, the cinematography, the editing is all very interesting, and it sort of builds to this crescendo of the first test of the atomic bomb. and then subsequent bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And the immediate sort of aftermath of that is chilling and brilliantly constructed. Just one of the best sequences put to film this year for sure. And that sort of segues into a third act, which kind of wraps up a sort of legal proceedings subplot that's been going on since the first hour. But now once we get to that sort of third act and we're moving and we can follow what's actually going on with this court proceeding, I got very invested, and the ending ended up being phenomenal to me. Like, just that's where we get some of Emily Blunt's best work is during that third act. You get some of Robert Downey Jr.'s best work as a supporting character. A lot of people have sort of said that, like, oh, now that he's free of Marvel, he can do some really good work. And I'm like, bitch, did you not watch Endgame? Like, the work that he did in that film was phenomenal. Say what you will about like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I think having sort of Angela Bassett break through and get nominated for an Oscar last year, I think people have to acknowledge that just because it's a superhero film, just because you view it as like popcorn fare, does not mean that those actors do not turn in phenomenal performances. I would say his performance in Endgame is better than it is in this film. It's excellent in this film, and don't get me wrong, I think it is deserving of a nomination, but I haven't. The poo-pooing of the sort of Marvel actors just pisses me off a little bit. So
poo-pooing and pissing aside, I have to agree with you there. I think it's this thing of somebody putting their whole pussy into a Marvel movie, and people just being, it's a Marvel movie, use clip. And then they make another movie, and they're like, make another movie, and the whole world stops. And it's just like, I get it, it's Nolan, but both performances can be good. Again, binary thinking is letting you bitches down.
Yeah.
It's letting you bitches down.
So yeah, I veered into some negativity again there, but I genuinely did like the film in the end. The first hour was rough. The first hour was rocky. I was like, ooh, do I not like this film? People have loved this film. Do I just not like it? And then I did. I genuinely did. I did really like it. I think I ended up giving it an 8 out of 10. I've sort of gone back and forth, and if I ever do watch it again, that rating could slide down or slide up. I doubt it would slide up. Probably slide down. But I probably won't watch it again because it is so long. And to get through that first hour is a slog. I wouldn't necessarily personally put it in sort of his top 5 films. If it were sort of in his top 5, it would be number 5. For me personally, I've seen a lot of people say that it's his best film. Even more people have said that he's most likely to get Oscar attention for this film. I think that is true. I think it feels more sort of Oscar baity than any of his other films, bar like The Dark Knight.
It's white men.
It's war. It's white men. It's autobiographical. It's people playing real people. I haven't spoken about Cillian Murphy to this point. I think he's also a shoo-in for a Best Actor nomination. Could end up winning. It was a very good performance. And he's sort of playing this character across a lot of different ages. There's a lot of sort of makeup and changes and stuff that he's doing with his performance that could absolutely get him in. I think it's gonna get a litany of other nominations, I'm sure. As I've said, Emily Blunt could get in. Robert Downey Jr. probably will get in. Nolan will probably get in for director. I think he's more likely to get in for director than Gerwig, unfortunately.
100%.
I think he's probably going to get into adapted screenplay as well, but I do think Gerwig is more likely to win adapted screenplay than he is because, as I've said, his writing is not the strong point of this film. It's not terrible if you're a man. If you're a woman character in this film, it's atrocious. It's so bad. But the male characters are written with depth, which says a lot about Nolan. Potentially. I think probably editing is a likely nomination. I think cinematography is a likely nomination. Score is definitely a likely nomination, if not a potential win. So many awards. I think some people have said sound. Again, as I said, there were sound mix issues where you can't hear what people are saying.
Thing. The sort of...
Yes, yeah, lots of that. But it's sort of splittingly loud, and then when they're speaking, you're like, what? What did he say? What did he say? Is he speaking English? I think he was, but I don't. It didn't
The
sound like
ultimate line
words.
of the film is like, I think I'm gonna bump the cat. And it's like, what? Like, I wish it was a different way.
And it's the thing of the score was also continuous throughout the film. So like, I don't think there's a moment of sort of, well, there's a very pointed moment with no music, but the music is throughout. But I just don't think it's been very well mixed with the dialogue at all.
Is it the thing where they hold in the one chord and then slowly go to the higher chord and then go to the deeper chord?
No, not even that. Proper composition, yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Ludwig does great work. Ludwig Göransson does great work. So yeah.
Swedish.
Yeah.
Fucked with Childish Gambino.
Yeah. Yep. The Mandalorian, Black Panther. Yeah. You know his sound, yeah.
White person.
Yes, yeah. But spicy white, you know?
Yeah.
On that note, we're going to take a quick break and we will be right back. And we're back. And the category is television. And we'll be talking about RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars 8, the 8th season of the All-Stars format, which features a cast of returning contestants vying for the crown and the $200,000 cash prize. This was an interesting cast of early outs.
Is that Shay? Baby?
No. I mean, genuinely, it was a really interesting mix of contestants. We had early outs.
Yeah.
Like James Mansfield, Kana Montrese, Mrs. Gusher Davis, all people who didn't really get to show a lot of what they had on their original seasons. As well as people who were almost finalists, people like Heidi N Closet, Lala Reed, Darian Lake, and also featured the first Canada's Drag Race contestant on a US show with Jimbo. They also introduced the twist this season of the Fame Games, where this season's eliminated contestants got to continue to showcase their runways to vie for a fan-voted prize. This was probably my least favorite All-Stars so far. Maybe second least. All-Stars 5 was rough.
She was.
Certainly the most sort of disinterested I've been in one of the big 5 Drag Race shows. The big 5 for me being main series, US All-Stars, UK Down Under, and Canada's Drag Race. Those are my personal big 5. This is probably the most disinterested I've been in a season so far.
I agree. I watched the first episode and I had to pay to watch more because of being in the US. And I said, actually, baby, I'm not gonna. And I'll just wait. And thank God I did. Now it's on a different thing and I can like watch it normally. But yeah.
And the thing is there were some moments to it that you know, were noteworthy. Some of the people like Jessica Wilde are always delightful. Obviously, Jimbo is really entertaining to watch. I really loved what James Mansfield was able to do this season.
I love her.
I love Heidi N Closet with my whole heart and soul. And like the challenges were well designed. The challenges were good. The queens did some fun things. It just seemed to have like this weird cloud over it. A sort of simmering tension and underlying unpleasantness. And I'm about to spoil things now. So sorry, Alex. And anyone else who hasn't seen things. But you had...
No, you silly goofers.
Silly geese. Go migrate somewhere else if you haven't watched the season. Apart from Alex, you have to stay. But we had Heidi quit a few episodes in after being consistently overlooked by the judging and feeling sort of overwhelmed by the infighting in the workroom. You had Alexis Michelle crying in every episode. Every.
It's not fun. It's the way you said it. Sorry, Alexis.
There was an episode where 2 more queens were on the verge of quitting to the point that RuPaul had to step in and give like a pep talk and be like, get yourselves together. But I think it's just... I don't know. Something's not working. The lip sync assassin twist feels very played out and stale. Yes. The winner is kind of the only queen that would have made any sense to win. She honestly dominated, and the edit and production around it felt very transparent about the fact that it was really not even close. Sorry, Candy Muse. It was really not close. She really did not have a chance at winning.
Only in her mind. Only in her.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, I just sort of had this feeling that the All-Stars format needs to change. I still love the All-Stars concept, like the idea of an All-Stars, I think is very necessary for Drag Race. And I think it should be about being able to see the queens you love get another go on the show. And it should be about being able to see queens that you maybe hated on their previous season in a new light and come to love them. People like Raja O'Hara, I could not stand in her first season.
It was a lot.
But then I was rooting for her to win twice when she came back for All-Stars and when she came back for Canada's Drag Race versus the World. I was rooting for her to win.
I cried.
Yeah. And that's what I think All-Stars should be about. Should be about celebrating these queens who didn't get a chance to win in their original season and want to, vie for another chance to showcase what they are and what they've become since they were on the show. It should be fun and it should be exciting, but I just think the format needs to change. And for me personally, my ideal format, right? I'm going to pitch. This is my elevator pitch.
Okay.
If there are any Drag Race producers that happen to come across this, and I don't think I'm the first person to suggest this particular format. I think I have seen other people mention it online. I did think of it independently before seeing people being like, "Oh, we've had the same idea. Love that." But for me, it should be a top 2 and a bottom 3 each episode.
Okay.
The top 2 lip sync, not for a chance to eliminate someone, but for the chance to save one of the bottom 3 queens. They still get the chance to do the lip sync for your legacy, which I think has really been like a standout thing. We've been able to see some really amazing queens at the top of their game lip sync against each other. That was one of the best parts of All Stars 2 through 4 for me, was being able to have that lip sync for your legacy. So I think that should stay. And then you have the bottom 2, whoever doesn't get saved, they lip sync for their lives. That way we get 2 lip syncs every episode. Love that. Lip syncs is one of the best parts of the show when it works well. Bottom 2 lip sync for their lives, and RuPaul makes the elimination decision. Because honestly, RuPaul and the producers are making the decision anyway. Exactly. And I think that's what's pissing some people off, is they can feel that sort of producer tampering, that producer meddling. There's something they keep doing on the All-Stars season where they have the person who won the first episode ends up in the bottom 2 the next episode. And it's a way for them to be like, this is someone else that we think is played out and they should go home. So they put them in the bottom 2 against someone who's been in the top, knowing that that's generally how things go with picking the lipsticks, is the person who has a win gets saved. So they're essentially choosing who goes home. And when it comes to and when it comes to choosing who wins the lip sync, a lot of the time it comes down to who chose the lipstick of the person that they want to go home. So I say remove that. And I think removing that also, you have these contestants actually have a chance to save themselves. I think that's part of what's felt off about the All-Stars format in the last couple of seasons, is you have these contestants, especially this season, where you had so many people who didn't get to show enough of themselves on their original season. And they're now put in a position of they are up for elimination. They can do nothing to save themselves. And it's just this sort of depression sort of sets in. And I feel like it sort of seeps into the workroom, and it leads to a lot of this sort of infighting that I was talking about that sort of seeded into what was happening with Heidi. And it's like they're playing Survivor. And I'm like, you're not Survivor. If you want to do Drag Survivor, make that a show. I'd watch it. But like, this shouldn't be that show for me. And I think you also get better. You set yourself up for some of the really great lip syncs, because that's another thing people have criticized, is that when you have a top 2 lip syncing for the legacy, it has the potential to be less sort of desperate, and people aren't fighting because they're like, I'm not going home. And you have people potentially throwing lip syncs because they don't want to be responsible for sending someone home. Whereas if it's a bottom 2, again, lip syncing for their lives, you get that desperate fighting for it lip sync, which can be some of the most entertaining lip syncs ever. The tops are scared to rock the boat in case they wind up in the bottom themselves and then get eliminated. It just, that twist was interesting for All Stars 2. It was really interesting. It led to some great TV moments. It was interesting in All Stars 3.
Together, we loved it.
And then it's sort of, from that point, it's sort of been a diminishing return. And I've never loved the lip sync assassin twist personally. I've never thought that was hugely effective, but I think it's particularly stale and tired now. So I think that needs to change. And I don't want it to sort of impact, because there was a lot of rumors that like All Stars 9 got cancelled because of the reception to this season. I think that's false. I think it is going ahead, but it was believable because this did not get the engagement that a Drag Race season normally gets, that an All Star season normally gets, and especially after the high that was All Stars 7, which changed up the format. No one went home. It was an all winners season. No one was up for elimination. They just got to like showcase who they were and have a great time. And it worked really well, and the audience loved it. So I don't think that necessarily needs to happen for every All-Star season. I do think eliminations probably should happen in when it's not an all-winners season. I think the eliminations should still happen, but I just think it needs to change. It needs to update. It needs to refresh, because when you have so many different spin-offs and seasons of Drag Race coming out a year, like Drag Race Down Under started this week, like immediately after.
Why didn't I?
All Stars 8? Yeah, immediately. And throughout All Stars 8, there's been several different shows. There was France. I think there was Italy. There was Mexico started as well. So there's so many spin-offs. If you're watching all the spin-offs, I personally don't watch all the spin-offs. I watch the big five. Call me a bad Drag Race stan, but I don't. I would be played out if I was watching every spin-off.
I don't watch it.
It just
I don't
has
have
to be
like
good.
Prime or subscription service.
Or they have to have their own feel as well. You know, like if you're going to have all these spin-offs, they need to have their own identity. Yeah,
Exactly. I agree. My thinking about Drag Race, especially the All Stars one, is that people have to not feel that it's fixed. It can still be fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah, people have to feel that it's not fixed. And then say you get people talking about it and getting engaged with it and not zoning out. I also think as a whole, the whole production needs to go on a team building and maybe just like, I don't know, bitch slap each other or something, because there is sort of a vibe that isn't, you can feel when the season's going on. You can feel when people are laughing behind the scenes. And it makes such a difference. You know, you can actually feel the energy.
Look at the last season of main season, or like the last season of UK Drag Race. Those were like, people were having a vibe. And
I laughed so hard. I texted you about laughing hard. And RuPaul's laughing hard too. And I just feel like for RuPaul to have to go down there and be like, hey, girls, I need everybody to
stop trying to quit my damn show. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think there's also like, it's the same way I feel about Love Island sometimes. Like, you have to genuinely take care of people's mental health. And I'm so happy that the queens know how to stick up for themselves and say when things aren't working for them, because that's the beauty of being a little bit older and at the all-star level is, you know, when shit is not working for you, and you know when you don't feel valued, and you know when it's time to jet. And I appreciate Heidi for doing that. And I think, especially with some of the stuff that's been coming up this week about Drag Race and payments due to people, et cetera, as it moves to a different streaming service yet again, I think, you know, we all have to have a real hard look at what connects us to this. And I hope they come back and also have had a good hard look at it, because I love Drag Race. I've watched a lot of, and for me to be so turned off by the first episode is kind of a weird thing.
Yeah.
I usually try and game the system and try and watch it somehow, some way. But I wasn't.
Even for me, like I didn't have that issue. I had access. I got my Wow Presents subscription. I could have watched it, all the episodes, every time they came out. But there were some weeks where I didn't watch it until the following week. I was sometimes catching up on 2 episodes at a time, just because I didn't feel the need to watch an episode, because I'm like, oh, the vibe in the last episode was off. I don't know if I'm in the mood for another one right now.
Does that make you feel good? It should feel good at the end credits. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Or at least pissed off enough to watch the next episode. Like, what if you have to feel something? Like,
yeah. And that feeling should not be discomfort.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. And maybe we're all just a bit sad because Queen of the Universe got cancelled.
It's a
But-
shame.
It's a shame. I like that show.
Yeah. But like Trixie as a judge, if nothing else, just get on another judging panel somewhere, please.
Bring it to May and bring it to the.
RuPaul's never going to let that happen.
Let her.
If it's going to be anyone, it's going to be Raven. If it's going to be anyone, it's going to be Raven. Like RuPaul's not going to allow another drag queen on that panel.
Have you
It's not
watched Raven's little YouTube series?
No, of course I haven't. Who has?
Me.
Oh, well done.
Where she kind of just critiques looks. Anyway,
If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
I'm not going to say.
So we shan't. Yeah. Right. I think that's all we had to talk about this week. So thank you so much for listening. If you want to give us a follow, we are at girlsgaysdays_pod on Instagram and TikTok. Video versions of this podcast are available on YouTube.
Oui. CC. And join us again next week for another set of queer culture. Santé.
Cheers.
What are you drinking, girl?
Some Pepsi.
Tips.
Is Pepsi okay? Have we checked on her?
Why did that immediately tickle out of my brain?